Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen. Welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut FLEXpectations. We're here every Thursday, 4:30pm. Just before I kick off this week's show, I just want to comment briefly on the ongoing situation in Minneapolis, and that's extended across the world, really, with protest movements springing up over the killing of George Floyd by a police officer. I don't want it to seem like I'm not concerned or I have no views on the subject, but I think the best way I can use the SecondsOut platform is to allow people who are a bit more connected to the tragedy and probably, far better informed about the situation leading to it and the aftermath than I am, which is why you'll find already on the channel an interview with Jamal James, the welterweight contender from Minneapolis, about what he's doing after what happened to George Floyd, and also the latest Debaters Digest addresses it, and our own London middleweight Denzel Bentley had some real poignant, insightful comments to make about everything that's going on as well. You'll see that either today or tomorrow. So I'm going to stick more on message, I guess, for Seconds Out, FLEXpectations. And what I thought I'd do this week is look at three of the all-domestic clashes that have been most talked about in the past week or so as boxing makes kind of baby steps towards returning. And there's been a real emphasis with promoters and broadcasters on doing all British clashes because it's hard to get opponents in from overseas with the ongoing travel restrictions caused by a COVID-19 pandemic. So three of the fights that we're most talked about, one is Conor Benn, potentially challenging for the British and Commonwealth welterweight titles against the champion Chris Jenkins. Eddie Hearn speculated it could kick off the Fight Camp series at Matchroom HQ, although Jenkins didn't seem particularly enamoured with that idea when I spoke to him recently. It's an interview you can see on the channel now. He said he's more than willing to fight Conor Benn. He'd like to fight. Conor Benn's is mandatory anyway, so he expects the fight to happen soon. But he wants to be able to have a proper fight camp, no pun intended, in the build-up. The problem is he hasn't been able to get in a boxing gym in the last 10 weeks, and restrictions in Wales, where Jenkins is from, are actually far more stringent than they are in England. Conor Benn presumably is already back training, so he trains at a Matchroom Elite gym, which isn't really open to the public, so that might already be back open again. So it's going to be quite difficult to see that happening in 6 or 7 weeks' time. But money talks, and I think if the financials offer is right, then Jenkins could obviously come round, especially if his gym reopens in good time. But we'll wait and see. I think it's a really good fight, and probably the most intriguing of the three I'm going to discuss, because Conor Benn, now's the time to pitch him in, I think, at top domestic level. He'll either sink or swim, but I think at this stage, with his abbreviated amateur career, they've built him up very slowly as a pro. He's had some opponents ask real questions of him, and he's at a level now where I don't think anyone's saying he's going to become a world champion, and it'd be a real impressive feat if he did, but we'll never know unless he tests himself at domestic level. And all due respect to Chris Jenkins, it's not like taking on one of the world-class British welterweights, an Amir Khan, a Kell Brook, even Josh Kelly, who's on the fringes now. He's taken on someone that Ben will go into the fight confident that he can win it. Jenkins isn't a big puncher at welterweight. He's not a particularly big welterweight either. He probably could still make super lightweight, although he might dispute that. But he is a very good boxer. He's got fast hands, really good boxing brain. The only thing that concerns me really in that fight is A, the size, and B, the fact that he cuts quite easily, or he has done in previous fights. And Ben always starts off very aggressively. So, there's every chance he could get an early finish in that fight, perhaps a cut stoppage or some sort of technical decision if it goes past the requisite number of rounds. However, if Jenkins is allowed to warm into the fight, I would say he's the more skillful, experienced, cunning, savvy operator, so could take over down the stretch. So it's a really intriguing fight. The other two, one that's been talked about almost immediately, people have been saying it probably won't happen, is a heavyweight clash between Hughie Fury and Dave Allen. Again, quite a well-matched contest on paper. Hughie Fury fell short against Alexander Povetkin not too long ago and has come back with an impressive win, albeit at a lower level. Dave Allen was schooled, I think it's fair to say, by David Price, but has proved himself in and around top domestic level previous to that, had that great win over Lucas Brown, of course. It pit, a talented kind of warrior in Dave Allen against a more technical operator in Hughie Fury, who until recently certainly has preferred to box off the back foot, but has been working with his dad and trainer Peter Fury to become more aggressive. So I think that would be a really interesting kind of crossroads fight, and a winner can go on to kind of fringe world level, and the loser goes back into the domestic mix once again. But it's been said that it might not be possible financially for that fight to come together. I can understand that, Dave Allen's been on Sky Sports box office so many times. He's a bit of a cult figure. He certainly does bring viewers. I can understand him wanting a certain amount of money. And the same with Hughie Fury. He's got the Fury name. He's been on Channel 5. He's fought at world level. So I think for a fight of that stature, they're both going to want money that may just not be available at the moment with all the restrictions in place, and the fact that TV companies probably aren't going to put any extra money into the budget. So promoters have got to work with what they've got. They've got to try and kind of spin base metal into gold, if you like. It's time for them to really earn their money, and fighters, some of them will play ball and some won't, some will hold out. If you're in a position where you can hold out, that you don't necessarily need to fight this year, then you may wait until the money's back there, live gates have returned, and promoters have that pot of gold that they can give to you for a fight and what you believe it's worth. But we'll see if that one takes place. Now the third one, which I would love to see, and could potentially be a BT Sport pay-per-view, although I think it's questionable. I don't know if the crossover appeal is big enough, but it's certainly a great fight for hardcore fans, would be middleweight Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Williams. Liam Williams obviously #1 contender now for the WBO belt, held by Demetrius Andrade. With the travel restrictions, that's probably not going to happen this year. Eubank has just started working with Roy Jones over in the US, which is an intriguing development in itself. He's at middleweight is definitely an imposing force, I think. He's much better suited to that than super middle. Hits a lot harder, certainly at middleweight as well, or his punches have more effect, at least, against the smaller opponents. Liam Williams obviously moved up from super welter and could probably still make that weight. So Eubank Jr. may have a size and strength advantage. Williams is probably the better boxer on a great run of form. He's not probably the better boxer, he is the better boxer, sorry. On a great run of form as well, devastating, getting people out of there as well, most recently against Atlantis Fox, which was really good performance. And I'd really like, and there's genuine needle there, certainly from the Williams side. He's been calling for this fight for a while. And it's one I'd really like to see. I think the temptation would be there to try and make it pay-per-view because of their standing on the world stage and Eubank's kind of name value. But in this current climate with people strapped for cash and there being probably no crowd at the event as well, I think it'd be hard to sell it as a pay-per-view. But it could easily be a TV show main event from BT Studios or wherever else Frank Warren's team will be promoting from going forward. So we shall see. But yeah, I think that's an incredible fight. It'd be good to hear from you guys what you think of those three fights. Not just which one you'd most look forward to if all three could be made, but also what results you'd expect in the three and how they compare as we go down the responses. And I'll come back to some of the better responses as well. As for me, I'll be back on Monday for the next Reflections, 4:30 PM, and next week Thursday with FLEXpectations at the same time. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.